Persecution Games, Book 1 of From the Shadows, the fictionalized memoirs of Kitty Hundle. Dedication. I would rather be too exposed to the inconveniences attending too much liberty than those attending too small a degree of it. Thomas Jefferson, December 23rd, 1791. This book is dedicated to the whistleblowers and activists of the new millennium. They are courageous individuals who have come forward with conviction to expose systemic corruption through enforced transparency. This corruption has been hidden under the guise of the alleged need for secrecy. It has been rationalized by the alleged need to protect our citizenry from terrorism. In fact, neither is necessary to the extent it is currently implemented. The alleged requirements for secrecy are, in reality, nothing more than a cover for gross abuses of power, such as corporate spying, corruption which includes tax evasions and frauds to the tune of trillions of dollars worldwide, mass surveillance, warrantless intrusions into our privacy, social activist targeting, harassment, persecution, and much more. These are the types of activities which our whistleblowers and hacktivists have revealed through their releases, and which our independent and alternative media has reported on in depth. Thanks to them, a climate of transparency, accountability, and justice has been created. This has enabled and strengthened demands for legal, governmental, and corporate transparency, combined with legal protections of personal privacy. This is a climate where the people of the world have begun standing up to draconian new laws which are being passed. Laws which violate well-established social norms, values, and standards. These laws are being passed simply to make what was illegal, legal. Thank you with all my heart to Julian Assange, Edward Snowden, Chelsea Manning, Barrett Brown, Jacob Applebaum, Aaron Swartz, now deceased, Jeremy Hammond, and the many others who have stepped forward but haven't been heard, or who have stepped forward but continue to be unknown publicly at the time of this writing. More are being arrested, charged, and convicted every year. We owe you all a great debt of gratitude. Hopefully your sacrifice will have been worth it if it results in existing laws being changed and new laws being enacted to protect and extend our democratic processes and citizens' rights. Rights that many shed blood to establish in the West, particularly from abuse of power of the corrupt. This is what the new civil rights movement stands for. WikiLeaks, Anonymous, Occupy, Idle No More, and the new independent alternative media are in the forefront of this new movement. They are all critical to its success because you are all potential targets for the type of corruption and abuse of power described in this book. We live in dangerous times, and I am writing my story because I don't want to see what happened to me happen to anyone else. This story, my story, is a warning call. Please heed the warning before it's too late. Introduction. Greta. A butterfly flaps its wings. 1958. Greta loved the peaceful aura of the terrace. She leaned back into the wooden garden chair, eyes half closed, gazing through her lashes at the butterflies and dragonflies dancing amongst the flowers. The sunshine warmed her face. The garden was lush with color. Deep red roses, white morning glories, pink carnations melted into a cascade of deep green vines and leaves. Her thoughts floated on the breeze in a cascade as chaotic as the vines. She was going to be released from the convalescent home in a week. The physiotherapy had helped her hip immensely. Other than a general soreness, which the doctor had assured her would go away as she became more mobile, she felt ready to face the world, physically at least. What she was going to do and where she was going to do it was another question. Vancouver had lots of restaurants. She could probably find a job as a cook or a waitress quite easily, but it would take time. In the meantime, she needed a place to live and money to manage until she found one. Her medical costs had eaten up all of her savings. She needed to find work quickly, not only to support herself, but to pay the outstanding medical costs. Greta had made her way through Europe and across Canada, working in restaurants as a cook or waitress, or sometimes both. Her last stop had been Dawson Creek, where people had been willing to give her time to get settled when she arrived low on funds. Small-town British Columbia was trusting. She wasn't sure people would be so generous and trusting in the big, bustling, sophisticated city of Vancouver. If she hadn't become ill, she'd still be in Dawson Creek. She'd enjoyed her time there, but the medical care she needed had only been available in Vancouver. She had been treated for a severe virus infection, which had infected her hip, making it difficult for her to walk or stand. After the infection had cleared, she had moved into a convalescent home in nearby New Westminster for additional physiotherapy. A soft voice behind her slipped through her reverie. Greta. She turned her head to see who was speaking. Yes? An attractive, very well-dressed young woman was standing demurely at the double-glass doors, which opened out on the terrace, clutching her dainty handbag in front of her. I understand you're looking for employment. I'm in rather desperate need of a good maid. I would need you to start work as soon as possible in Victoria. Greta smiled, breathing a deep sigh of relief. Her problems were solved. Introduction. Eileen. A butterfly flaps its wings. 1969. Why did you bring that girl here? Eileen struggled to control her rage. You wanted me to recruit her. I brought her here to meet with Guruji. I don't understand why he wouldn't meet her, Hari replied, confused by her anger. Recruitment takes time. You don't talk to a person once and then bring them in, unless you're sure they're in the right space to accept things, Eileen replied firmly. I thought she was. Why don't you talk to her and see for yourself? Hari suggested. She'll be at the hospital again tomorrow. Eileen looked skeptical but agreed. She had asked Hari to befriend Rita and influence her, not bring her into their inner circle right away. What she wanted was for him to establish an influential relationship with her, and then they'd bring her in slowly as his influence grew. As things stood, it looked like Hari may have ruined everything. Eileen assumed that Rita must know that the house they rented was owned by her mother. What if she told her family what it was being used for? Her paranoia grew by the minute. She and Hari walked to his spot the next morning. Hari did his usual chants and dance to draw attention to their fundraising for the ashram. 16-year-old Rita walked by a few minutes later and waved a friendly hello. Rita, come and meet a friend of mine, Hari called out. After chatting for a few minutes about religious philosophy, Eileen brought the conversation to a quick, unfriendly halt. You're so close-minded, she challenged. Not at all, just a rationalist, replied Rita, smile intact. She wasn't going to let Eileen's hostility get to her or provoke her. It was just ironic that a closed-minded person like Eileen, who thought her way was the only way, was calling Rita closed-minded. The source of Eileen's hostility was that she was unable to address the issues Rita raised in response to her dogma rationally, and she likely knew it. Hari had been better at it. There's my bus. I've got to go. Have a great day. Rita waved as she strolled to the bus stop near where they were standing. What an unpleasant girl, Eileen ranted. On their return to the ashram, Eileen had a brief private conversation with the guru, and then announced to everyone that the ashram would be closing and that they would be going back to Montreal to set up a new one. 2 months later, Rita's stepfather, Dave, announced that one of the houses their mother owned had been trashed, and the renters hadn't paid rent for 2 months. He insisted they all go there to clean it up. Rita was shocked when they parked in front of the house that had been the ashram that Hari had taken her to. The entire house was a disgusting mess, with filthy mattresses in the basement and bedrooms lining the floor side by side, and rotting mold-covered food in the fridge. "This is disgusting," Rita declared. "I'm not cleaning up this mess." "I guess we could hire someone to do it," Dave said reluctantly. "Good idea," Rita responded, trying hard to keep the sarcasm out of her voice. He was the one who rented it to those people. It was his responsibility, not theirs. Introduction. Rita. A Butterfly Flaps Its Wings, 1972. The butterfly effect encapsulates the more technical notion of sensitive dependence on initial conditions in chaos theory. Wikipedia. Gino sat behind the ancient stained oak desk with the phone pressed tightly against his ear, trying desperately to hear what was being said by the muffled voice on the other end of the line. He had arrived at the bookstore early to get some work done before things got busy. While walk-in customers were few and far between, the bookstore on College Street, the ethnic center of the Italian community at the time, was usually a hotbed of activity. Members of the People's Party stopped in to pick up the daily People's Party newspaper to sell to contacts as well as on the street. Meetings were also held throughout the day and into the evening to discuss ideology, protests, and organizational matters. Tom had also come in early to help organize the newspapers into packets of 20 for quick pickup by the local activists. Gino observed him quietly replacing the tape on the corner of one of the many bright red banners with gold lettering that graced the walls with anti-war and anti-capitalist slogans. The top right corner of the banner had come loose. The phone rang regularly from people inquiring about the People's Party, as well as for book orders and contact inquiries about events. This call was different. The voice was deep, low, and muffled. The person at the other end of the line appeared to be attempting to disguise his voice. "Who are you?" Gino asked impatiently. "And what exactly are you trying to tell me? I can barely hear you, and I can't understand what you're saying." "Tell Joseph Redpath to stop his political activity and shut down the People's Party," the disembodied voice whispered. Gino laughed in response. The disembodied voice continued in a harsher, more threatening tone. "If Joseph Redpath doesn't stop, we're going to target his niece, the pretty one. We'll destroy her." Gino's laughter died quickly as the caller disconnected. He waved Tom over while scribbling a message quickly on a scrap of paper, slid it into an envelope, sealed it, and asked Tom to deliver it to Joe immediately. Rita was in danger.